The diamond glittered on her finger, a promise whispered just weeks before. Rachel Vance, radiant and brimming with the joy of impending motherhood, believed her future with the enigmatic billionaire Alexander Sterling was set in stone. Then the silence. Not a fight, not a note, just a void where he used to be. Vanished. 3 years later, Rachel, now Dr. Rachel Vance, a name synonymous with innovation and philanthropy, walked into the gilded ballroom of the St. Jude Children's Hospital charity gala. Her heart, long mended but still scarred, faltered. Across the crowded room, his eyes, those familiar stormy grey eyes, locked onto hers. Alexander Sterling, the man who shattered her world, stood frozen. But it was the little hand clutching hers, a tiny echo of Alexander, that truly stole the breath from his lungs. This is not just a story, it's a raw testament to betrayal, resilience, and a twist of fate that proves some ties can never truly be severed. The crisp October air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the faint, sweet perfume of anticipation. Rachel Vance, then a bright-eyed architect with a passion for historical preservation, felt her world shift on its axis the moment Alexander Sterling walked into her life. It wasn't a whirlwind romance born of lavish dates and public displays, but a slow, consuming burn cultivated over late-night discussions about ancient Roman arches and the future of sustainable design. Alexander, the reclusive tech magnate behind Ether Dynamics, a company valued in the billions, was an enigma wrapped in bespoke suits. His intelligence was sharp, his ambition boundless, and his touch, when it finally came, electrifying. Their first meeting had been accidental, a collision of worlds at a private art auction in New York City. Rachel there with her mentor, Mrs. Evelyn Hayes, a formidable woman in her late 70s who had seen more of life than most could imagine, had been captivated by a rare piece of early to 20th century Russian avant-garde art. Alexander, standing a few feet away, had offered an insightful comment about its cubist influences that immediately drew her in. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from art to architecture, then to environmental concerns, and finally to their shared passion for quiet evenings and classical music. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, profoundly intelligent, intensely private, yet surprisingly tender in his interactions with her. Within 6 months, their relationship had deepened into something profound. Alexander, usually guarded, began to peel back layers, revealing glimpses of a lonely childhood driven by the singular desire to prove himself. He spoke of building Ether Dynamics from a garage startup into a global empire fueled by sleepless nights and unwavering focus. Rachel found herself falling deeper in love with the man beneath the billionaire persona, the one who cooked her breakfast on Sunday mornings, who debated the merits of obscure philosophical texts, and who, despite his immense wealth, preferred simple, meaningful moments over ostentatious displays. One rainy Saturday, curled on the plush velvet sofa in Alexander's sprawling penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, he had proposed. It wasn't a grand public spectacle, but a quiet, heartfelt moment. He pulled out a delicate antique ring, a sapphire encircled by diamonds, telling her it had belonged to his grandmother. "Rachel," he had murmured, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable, "you're the only person who has ever seen me, truly seen me. Will you be my wife?" Tears had welled in her eyes as she nodded her yes, a whispered promise echoing his. The future stretched out before them, shimmering with possibility, a testament to a love that felt both destined and hard-won. Their engagement was kept quiet, a shared secret between them, and a handful of close friends and family. Rachel had eagerly shared the news with her best friend Clara Beaumont, a fiery investigative journalist who had always been Rachel's grounding force. Clara, though initially skeptical of Alexander's reclusive nature, had warmed to him after seeing Rachel's undeniable happiness. "Just promise me he's not a secret spy or something, love," Clara had joked over a celebratory brunch. "Billionaires always have secrets." Rachel had laughed, brushing off the comment secure in her love. The first few weeks of their engagement were a blissful haze of wedding planning, albeit low-key, as per Alexander's preference for privacy, dreaming of their future home, and the exciting prospect of starting a family. They discussed names for their future children, debated schools, and even picked out a potential plot of land upstate where they envisioned building a sustainable, eco-friendly home. Alexander, usually so reserved about his emotions, seemed genuinely excited. He spoke of wanting a large family, of teaching his children about the stars, and of creating a legacy beyond just his company. Rachel, watching him, felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was it. Her forever. Then came the morning sickness. Rachel initially dismissed it as a stomach bug, but as the days turned into weeks, a quiet suspicion began to bloom. A trip to the pharmacy, a nervous wait, and 2 pink lines confirmed it. She was pregnant, Alexander's child. Her heart swelled with a joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She imagined his reaction, his quiet strength, his surprising tenderness, the way he would cradle her hand as they discussed their impending parenthood. This was the missing piece, the ultimate bond that would intertwine their lives forever. She decided to tell him that evening, planning a special dinner at home. She cooked his favorite pasta dish, lit candles, and even bought a tiny pair of baby booties, wrapping them in a small box. Alexander arrived home late, his usual pattern, but with a slight tension in his shoulders that Rachel attributed to a long day at work. He kissed her forehead, a brief, preoccupied gesture. As they ate, Rachel tried to gauge his mood, her own excitement bubbling beneath the surface. Finally, she couldn't wait any longer. "Alexander," she began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "I have something wonderful to tell you." She pushed the small, wrapped box across the table. He looked at it, then at her, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He opened it slowly, his long fingers carefully unwrapping the ribbon. When he saw the tiny booties, his expression remained carefully neutral. "Rachel," he said, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth she had come to expect. "What is this?" Her heart sank a fraction. "It means we're going to be parents, Alexander. I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." She waited, breath held, for the smile, the embrace, the joyous exclamations. Instead, silence descended, heavy and suffocating. Alexander pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. He walked to the window, his back to her, looking out at the glittering city lights, which seemed to mock her joyous news with their cold indifference. "This changes things," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel felt a chill creep up her spine. "Changes what? It makes us a family, Alexander. It's wonderful, isn't it?" He turned, his face unreadable. "Wonderful, Rachel, my life, my company. It's not set up for this. I can't have distractions right now. Ether dynamics is at a critical juncture. We're on the cusp of something massive, something that requires my undivided attention. A baby isn't a distraction, Alexander. It's a blessing. Our blessing." Her voice rose, desperation creeping in. "A blessing that I am not prepared for," he stated, his tone chillingly detached. "We discussed having children, yes, but not now. Not like this. Not without a proper plan." "A proper plan," What plan could be more proper than love and commitment? Her eyes welled with tears, a sharp pain twisting in her gut. This wasn't the Alexander she knew, the one who dreamt of teaching his children about the stars. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture of exasperation. Rachel, you don't understand the pressures I'm under. The stakes. This isn't just about us. It's about hundreds of thousands of jobs, an entire industry on the brink of revolution. I can't afford to lose focus. And I'm a distraction to your empire. Her voice broke. He didn't answer directly. We need to be practical about this. We can explore options. The unspoken word hung in the air: abortion. Rachel gasped, recoiling as if struck. No, Alexander, how could you even suggest that this is our child? His jaw tightened. It's a complication, Rachel, a significant one. And quite frankly, I don't see a way around it right now. The argument escalated, spiraling into a nightmare. Rachel pleaded, reasoned, cried, but his resolve seemed to harden with every word. He spoke of duty, of responsibility to his company, of the grand vision for ether dynamics that couldn't be derailed by personal matters. She accused him of cowardice, of abandoning his promises, of reducing their love and their child to mere complications. The man she loved, the man who had proposed with such tenderness, had transformed into a cold, calculating stranger. The next morning, Rachel woke to an empty bed. She thought he had gone to work early, perhaps to cool off, to think things through. She called his office. His assistant, a meticulous woman named Ms. Thorne, informed her he was out of office indefinitely. She called his private line. His personal assistant, Leo Maxwell, picked up, confirming Alexander had left for an urgent, unplanned business trip and would be unreachable. No note, no message, no goodbye, just a void. Days turned into a week into two. Alexander Sterling had vanished. His private jet had reportedly flown to a remote location in Switzerland, then to Singapore. Then the trail went cold. Rachel was left alone in the vast penthouse, the tiny booties, a painful reminder of the future that had been snatched away. The silence was deafening, amplified by the growing flutter in her womb. Clara, frantic with worry, came over every day. He'll come back, Rachel. He has to. He wouldn't just abandon you like this, especially not with a baby on the way. But deep down, Rachel knew. He had made his choice. His empire over his family. The realization was a crushing blow. The man she loved, the man she was going to marry, had abandoned her when she was most vulnerable. The initial shock gave way to a potent cocktail of grief, anger, and a bewildering sense of betrayal. She was pregnant, alone, and heartbroken. The world, which had seemed so bright just weeks before, was now cloaked in a perpetual grey. She tried to contact his family, but Alexander had always maintained that he was estranged from them, a result of his relentless pursuit of success. His legal team, led by the formidable Mr. Jonathan Vance, no relation to Rachel, ironically sent her a formal letter, coldly stating Alexander had terminated their engagement due to irreconcilable differences and offering a generous financial settlement in exchange for her silence and the relinquishing of any claims. The letter didn't even acknowledge the pregnancy. It was a final, brutal nail in the coffin of their relationship. Rachel refused the money. It felt like blood money, an insult to the love she had believed was real. She decided then, cradling her still flat stomach, that she would never let Alexander Sterling or anyone else define her worth or her future. She would raise this child on her own, with pride and strength. The dream of a shared future with Alexander was dead, but a new, fiercely independent dream was slowly taking root. It was a dream born of pain, but forged in an unyielding will to survive and thrive. She packed her bags, left the penthouse, and moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn, far from the gilded cages of Manhattan. She would make her own way. She would be enough for her and for the life growing inside her. The first battle was one she would not let him break her spirit. The Brooklyn apartment was a stark contrast to the opulent penthouse she had left behind. Smaller, humbler, but filled with a quiet determination that the Manhattan high-rise had never truly possessed. Rachel spent the first few weeks in a haze of morning sickness and profound grief, the kind that settles in your bones and makes every movement feel like wading through thick mud. The betrayal gnawed at her, a bitter pill she swallowed daily. How could someone she loved so deeply, someone who had promised forever, vanish without a trace, leaving her to face such a monumental journey alone? The questions echoed in the empty spaces of the apartment, haunting her sleep and shadowing her days. Yet amidst the despair, a fierce resolve began to flicker. It started as a tiny spark, fueled by the tiny life growing inside her. This baby, innocent and utterly dependent, deserved a world of love, stability, and opportunity. Rachel refused to let Alexander's abandonment define her child's future or her own. Her love for this unborn child became her unwavering compass. Clara Beaumont, true to her nature, became Rachel's rock. She moved in for a month, bringing with her a chaotic but comforting presence, armed with endless cups of ginger tea, bad jokes, and a keen eye for any sign of Rachel slipping into deeper despondency. Clara, with her investigative reporter's tenacity, had tried to dig into Alexander's sudden disappearance, contacting sources, looking for anything that might explain his bizarre behavior. But Alexander Sterling was a ghost, leaving no digital footprint or financial trace beyond his massive corporate empire. "He's completely locked down," Rachel, Clara had admitted one evening, frustrated. "It's like he vanished into thin air, almost too clean. Makes me wonder." Clara never finished the thought, but the implication hung heavy. Was there more to his disappearance than simple callousness? Rachel, however, was too consumed by her immediate reality to dwell on conspiracies. Evelyn Hayes, Rachel's former mentor, also stepped up, offering not just emotional support, but practical advice. Evelyn, a widow who had built her own successful architecture firm from scratch in an era less forgiving to women, understood ambition and adversity. "My dear," Evelyn had said, her voice raspy but firm, "the greatest revenge is living well, and building something even grander than what was taken from you." Evelyn's words became a mantra, a quiet fire that stoked Rachel's ambition. Rachel continued working freelance, taking on small architectural commissions, designing extensions for brownstones, and consulting on historic building renovations. It was enough to pay the bills, but her heart wasn't fully in it. Her mind kept drifting to the sustainable, eco-friendly designs she had once discussed with Alexander. The world was facing urgent environmental challenges, and her skills could be applied to more than just luxury homes. As her pregnancy progressed, a new clarity emerged. She realized her passion wasn't just about preserving the past, but building a better future. Her architectural vision began to morph, shifting towards sustainable infrastructure, community-focused developments, and innovative green technologies. She started devouring academic papers, attending online seminars, and networking with environmental engineers and urban planners. She found a particular fascination with regenerative architecture designs that not only minimized environmental impact, but actively restored ecosystems. The day Leo was born, Leo Vance, a strong, healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and Alexander's startling grey eyes, was the day Rachel truly felt reborn. Holding her son, a tiny, perfect being, erased every ounce of self-pity. He was her purpose, her joy, her reason to fight. The pain of Alexander's betrayal still lingered a phantom ache, but it was overshadowed by the profound, unconditional love she felt for Leo. The first year of motherhood was a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and the overwhelming wonder of watching Leo grow. Rachel breastfed, learned to navigate colicky evenings, and discovered the profound joy of a baby's giggle. She also worked whenever Leo slept, fueled by copious amounts of coffee and an unshakable belief that she could and would provide a secure future for her son. She started drafting plans for a conceptual project, a self-sustaining urban park with integrated renewable energy systems and community gardens. It was ambitious, perhaps even naive, but it ignited a spark within her. It was during one of her late-night research sessions that she stumbled upon a forgotten concept from her university days: bioclimatic design. She began sketching, refining, and iterating, creating designs that weren't just buildings, but living, breathing ecosystems. She envisioned structures that harvested rainwater, generated their own energy, and purified the air. It was a radical departure from traditional architecture, blending cutting-edge technology with ancient wisdom. One evening, nursing Leo, a name came to her: Viridia Group. It would be a firm dedicated to innovative, sustainable urban development. It was a bold idea for a single mother in a small Brooklyn apartment, but the vision felt tangible, urgent. Evelyn Hayes, upon seeing Rachel's sketches and detailed proposals, was immediately impressed. "This is it, Rachel," Evelyn had declared, her eyes gleaming with pride. "This is your legacy, and it's far more impactful than any skyscraper Alexander Sterling could ever conceive." Evelyn, with her extensive network, introduced Rachel to Dr. Aris Thorne, a renowned environmental scientist and venture capitalist known for backing audacious green tech startups. Dr. Thorne, a stoic but brilliant man, initially gave Rachel a skeptical once-over. But as Rachel passionately articulated her vision for Viridia Group, presenting detailed models and financial projections she had painstakingly researched, Dr. Thorne's skepticism began to crack. He saw not just an architect, but a visionary, a force of nature. He was particularly impressed by her detailed plan for a modular, rapidly deployable, sustainable housing unit designed for disaster relief zones and underserved communities. "This isn't just theory, Ms. Vance," Dr. Thorne had said, stroking his neatly trimmed beard. "This has real-world application, real impact, and crucially, real market potential." With Dr. Thorne's initial seed funding and Evelyn's guidance, Viridia Group was born. Rachel worked relentlessly, juggling board meetings with playdates, design reviews, with doctor's appointments. Her apartment became her office, cluttered with blueprints, material samples, and Leo's colorful toys. Clara, when not chasing down political scandals, helped with PR and marketing, using her journalistic skills to craft compelling narratives about Viridia's mission. The first major breakthrough came with their pilot project, a sustainable community center in a neglected corner of Queens, New York. It was a challenging build, fraught with logistical hurdles and bureaucratic red tape, but Rachel's determination was unyielding. She spent days on site, overseeing construction, troubleshooting issues, her resolve hardening with every successful milestone. The center, powered by solar and wind energy, featuring a vertical farm and a rainwater harvesting system became a beacon of hope for the community. Its success garnered national attention, earning Viridia Group numerous accolades and, more importantly, securing larger contracts. Rachel's reputation soared. She was invited to speak at global sustainability conferences, featured in Forbes as a visionary for a greener tomorrow, and awarded an honorary doctorate from Columbia University for her groundbreaking work in regenerative architecture. Thus, Dr. Rachel Vance was born. Viridia Group expanded rapidly, opening offices in San Francisco and London, taking on projects ranging from large-scale urban regeneration to designing self-sufficient eco-cities in developing nations. As Viridia Group's influence grew, so did Rachel's personal wealth. The modest Brooklyn apartment was replaced by a beautiful, sustainably designed home in upstate New York, complete with a sprawling garden where Leo could play. She ensured Leo was always her priority, dedicating evenings and weekends entirely to him. He was a bright, curious child, mirroring Alexander's sharp intellect, but possessing Rachel's warmth and boundless empathy. Sometimes, looking into his eyes, Rachel saw Alexander, a fleeting ghost of the past, but the ache was dulled by the vibrant, joyous reality of her son. 3 years had passed since Alexander Sterling's disappearance. 3 years of relentless hard work, of overcoming unimaginable heartbreak, and of building an empire not of cold steel and data, but of green hope and tangible impact. Rachel Vance was no longer the heartbroken fiancée. She was a titan in her field, a respected innovator, and most importantly, a fiercely devoted mother. Her past was a scar, a reminder of what she had survived, but it no longer defined her. She had built her own world, a world where she was in control, a world filled with purpose and the boundless love of her son. She chose her dress carefully for the gala, a deep emerald green gown that shimmered with quiet elegance, reflecting her new confidence. Her hair, usually swept back in a practical bun, was styled in soft waves. She wanted to feel strong, poised, ready for anything. But as she adjusted the delicate sapphire necklace at her throat, a gift from Evelyn, a faint tremor of apprehension ran through her. It wasn't about the gala itself, but a lingering, subconscious unease. She attributed it to the general anxiety of public events. She couldn't have known that tonight the carefully constructed walls around her heart would face their ultimate test. Leo, now 3, clung to her hand, his small fingers warm and trusting. He was her anchor, her undeniable proof of a future built not on shattered promises, but on unwavering love and relentless resilience. The grand ballroom of the St. Jude Children's Hospital Charity Gala glittered with 1,000 tiny lights reflecting off crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. The air hummed with the soft murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the distant strains of a classical string quartet. Mingling among New York's elite, philanthropists, business moguls, celebrities, Rachel Vance, accompanied by a surprisingly well-behaved Leo, felt a familiar surge of pride. This event was close to her heart. Viridia Group had become a significant donor to St. Jude, and she served on its advisory board. Leo, dressed in a miniature navy suit, his dark hair neatly combed, looked around with wide, curious eyes. He was a beacon of innocence in the opulent room, occasionally pointing at a particularly shiny object or whispering a question about the sparkly lights. Rachel, ever the doting mother, knelt to answer his inquiries, her emerald gown fanning out around her. Her focus was entirely on him, the quiet hum of the evening, a backdrop to their shared moment. It was as she stood to greet a fellow board member, Mr. Harrison Davies, a jovial real estate developer, that the air in the room suddenly thinned. A cold dread, sharp and immediate, seized her. Her eyes, drawn by an invisible current, drifted across the room, and then she saw him, Alexander Sterling. He stood near the colossal marble fireplace, a vision in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair slicked back, his jawline as sharp and unyielding as she remembered. He was engaged in conversation with two stern-faced men, his expression typically detached, powerful. 3 years. 3 agonizing years since she had last seen that face, since he had disappeared like a ghost. He looked older, perhaps, with faint lines etched around his piercing grey eyes, but no less formidable. The room seemed to recede, the background noise fading into a distant hum. All she could hear was the frantic pounding of her own heart. He turned his head slightly, his gaze sweeping across the room. Their eyes met. For a long, agonizing second, the world stood still. Alexander's cultivated composure fractured. His eyes, usually so guarded, widened imperceptibly. The faint smile he had been offering his companions vanished. His entire body stiffened, a statue carved from shock. He saw her, and then his gaze dropped, falling to the small hand clutching Rachel's, to the bright, curious eyes that mirrored his own. Leo. The shock on Alexander's face was visceral, raw. It was a dawning horror mixed with an incomprehensible realization. His lips parted slightly, but no sound escaped. He looked from Leo to Rachel and back again, as if trying to reconcile a sudden, impossible truth. His usual aura of unshakable power evaporated, replaced by a profound vulnerability that Rachel had rarely witnessed even during their most intimate moments. Rachel, despite the tremor running through her, mustered every ounce of her hard-won composure. She would not let him see her break. Not now. Not ever again. She offered a tight, almost imperceptible nod to Mr. Harrison Davies, excusing herself with a murmured apology, her hand tightening around Leo's. She pivoted smoothly, guiding Leo towards the quieter alcove where the silent auction items were displayed, her back ramrod straight, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. "Mummy, what's wrong? Your hand is shaky," Leo whispered, his innocent voice a piercing arrow through her carefully constructed shield. "Nothing, sweet pea," she managed, her voice a little too breathy. "Just a little tired. Let's go look at the pretty paintings." She knelt, forcing a smile, shielding Leo from Alexander's line of sight, though she could still feel his searing gaze on her back. The confrontation, she knew, was inevitable, but she needed a moment to steel herself, to remember who she was now, not the heartbroken girl he had abandoned. She felt a presence beside her. "Rachel, are you all right? You look a little pale." She looked up to see Dr. Julian Thorne, a brilliant pediatric oncologist at St. Jude, and the son of her initial investor, Dr. Aris Thorne. Julian was kind, intelligent, and possessed a quiet strength that Rachel had come to deeply appreciate over the past year. He had become a close friend, a confidant, and there was an unspoken understanding between them, a gentle blossoming of something more profound than friendship, though neither had dared to name it. Julian had been her constant companion at many events, a calming presence in her busy life, and Leo adored him. "Julian," Rachel said, forcing a lighter tone, "I'm fine, just a little overwhelmed by the crowd. Leo, say hello to Dr. Julian." Leo, beaming, reached for Julian's hand. "Hi, Dr. Julian. Look, a robot," he exclaimed, pointing at a small, intricate model in a glass case. Julian smiled, his gaze warm and reassuring. He ruffled Leo's hair. "That's quite the robot, buddy. Someday, maybe we can build one together. As Julian engaged Leo in conversation, Rachel risked another glance. Alexander was no longer at the fireplace. He was moving slowly, deliberately navigating the throng of people, his eyes fixed on them, on her, on Leo. The color had returned to his face, replaced by a steely determination. "Julian," Rachel murmured, her voice low, "I think I need some air. Could you stay with Leo for a moment? I'll be right back." Julian, sensing the urgency in her voice, nodded. "Of course. Take your time. We'll be fine here, won't we, Leo?" Leo nodded enthusiastically, already engrossed in Julian's explanation of the robot's inner workings. Rachel squeezed Julian's arm in gratitude and quickly made her way towards the nearest exit, her emerald gown swishing softly. She needed a moment to breathe, to prepare for the inevitable storm. Alexander, however, was faster. He intercepted her just as she reached the double doors leading to the quieter foyer. "Rachel." His voice, deep and resonant, sent shivers down her spine, a sound she hadn't heard in 3 years, yet instantly recognized. She turned slowly, her expression carefully neutral, a mask of cool indifference. "Alexander Sterling." What a surprise. Her voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging within her. He stepped closer, his stormy gray eyes searching hers, a flicker of desperation in their depths. "Rachel, I had no idea." "No idea about what, Alexander?" She challenged, her eyebrow arching slightly. "That New York is a small city, or that people tend to move on with their lives after being abandoned without a word." He flinched, the words landing with surgical precision. That's not what I mean. I saw the boy. He's mine, isn't he?" His voice was hoarse, laced with a tremor of awe and disbelief. "He's Leo," Rachel stated simply, her gaze unwavering. "And he's my son." The emphasis on "my" was deliberate, a subtle but firm assertion of her sole claim. "He has my eyes," Alexander whispered, his voice tinged with a painful wonder. "And his hair, it's just like mine was when I was a child." Coincidences happen, Alexander. It was a lie, and they both knew it, but Rachel wouldn't grant him the satisfaction of confirmation. Not now, not here. He took another step, closing the distance between them. "Rachel, please. We need to talk. I have to understand." "Understand what?" Her voice was laced with a chilling sarcasm. "That you were a coward, that your empire meant more to you than your family." "There's nothing to understand, Alexander. You made your choice, and I made mine." "My choice was complicated, Rachel. It wasn't simple. You don't know the full story." He sounded genuinely distraught, a stark contrast to the cold pragmatism he had displayed 3 years prior. "The story I know is that you vanished, leaving a pregnant woman alone and heartbroken." She countered, her voice finally losing its composure, a raw edge of old pain surfacing. "That's the only story that matters." He reached out, as if to touch her arm, but she instinctively recoiled, a sharp intake of breath. The gesture stopped him cold. His hand dropped, clenching into a fist at his side. "I need to explain," he pleaded, his voice raspy. "Please, Rachel, for Leo." "There's nothing to explain, Alexander. And Leo doesn't need you. He has a family who loves him, who has been there for him every single day. We don't need your explanations or your apologies." She glanced past him, her eyes scanning the room, searching for Julian and Leo. She saw Julian still with Leo, who was now excitedly pointing at something else. "Who was that man?" Alexander asked, his voice suddenly sharp, a possessive edge creeping in. His gaze narrowed on Julian, a flicker of something akin to jealousy in his eyes. "The one with Leo." "That's Dr. Julian Thorne," Rachel replied, her tone deliberately cool. "A friend, and Leo's godfather." It wasn't entirely true. Julian wasn't officially Leo's godfather, but the title carried weight, a subtle declaration of Julian's importance in their lives. She watched Alexander's face, seeing the muscle jump in his jaw, the slight clenching of his hands. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what she had felt. "Godfather," Alexander scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "How quickly you replaced me." "You weren't replaced, Alexander," Rachel stated, her voice hardening. "You abandoned. There's a difference. And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to the people who actually care about me and my son." She brushed past him, her head held high, leaving him standing alone in the foyer, a solitary figure amidst the festive chatter. She walked back into the ballroom, her heart still hammering, but a surge of defiant pride empowering her steps. She had faced him. She had stood her ground. Alexander, however, was not easily deterred. He returned to his companions, feigning composure, but his eyes never left Rachel and Leo. He observed Julian with them, the easy camaraderie, the affection in Julian's gaze when he looked at Rachel, the way Leo instinctively leaned into Julian's touch. It was a scene of domestic warmth, of love and stability, a picture of the family he could have had, the family he had so carelessly thrown away. Alexander felt a cold, empty ache in his chest. He had climbed the highest mountains of corporate success, amassed unimaginable wealth, but tonight, standing in this glittering ballroom, he felt poorer than he ever had in his life. He had lost everything that truly mattered, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that he would do anything to get it back. The game for Alexander Sterling had just begun. The morning after the gala, the city awoke to a crisp, clear day, but for Rachel Vance, the world felt murky and unsettled. Alexander Sterling's sudden reappearance had ripped open old wounds she thought had long healed, exposing raw nerves she hadn't known existed. The image of his face stunned and then desperate haunted her thoughts, but even more unsettling was the look in his eyes when he saw Leo, a raw, possessive hunger that made a chill run down her spine. Her phone, usually a tool of work and connection, became a source of dread. Alexander's number, blocked for 3 years, somehow found its way to her new personal line, her office line, even her email. He left messages carefully worded and formal, yet imbued with an urgency she couldn't ignore. "Rachel, please, this is important. It's about Leo, and it's about the truth." Clara, always perceptive, noticed her friend's renewed tension. "He's making contact, isn't he?" she asked over their morning coffee, her investigative instincts already on high alert. Rachel sighed, pushing a stray curl from her face. "He's relentless. He wants to explain. Explain, abandoning you when you were pregnant. There's no explanation for that, Rachel. Unless—" Clara's eyes narrowed. "Unless it wasn't as simple as he made it seem. I told you his vanishing act was too clean." Julian Thorne, ever supportive, offered a different perspective. "Rachel, perhaps for Leo's sake, you should hear him out. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to understand. Leo will eventually have questions, and a clear, albeit difficult narrative might be better than a void." His words, delivered gently, resonated with her. Julian understood the importance of clarity, especially for a child. After several days of relentless messages, Rachel, exhausted by the emotional siege, agreed to meet Alexander. Not at her home, not at his, but in a neutral public space. She chose a quiet corner of the New York Public Library, a place of knowledge and reasoned thought, hoping its hallowed atmosphere would temper any outbursts. She insisted Julian accompany her, not just for moral support, but as a silent, unwavering witness. Alexander arrived promptly, looking haggard, lines of sleeplessness etched around his eyes. He rose when Rachel approached, his gaze fixed on her, then briefly cautiously on Julian. "Dr. Thorne," he acknowledged, a flicker of resentment in his voice. "Mr. Sterling." Julian replied, his voice calm, polite but firm. He took a seat next to Rachel, creating a subtle barrier. "I asked for this meeting alone, Rachel." Alexander began, his tone tight. "You're not in a position to make demands, Alexander." Rachel stated, her voice clipped. "And Julian is here as my advocate. Anything you say in front of him. Now speak your truth. I'm waiting." Alexander took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly on the table. 3 years ago, Ether Dynamics was on the brink of collapse. Not financially, but politically. We had developed a new energy synthesis technology, something that could have revolutionized the global energy market, rendering fossil fuels obsolete overnight. Rachel listened, skepticism warring with a morbid curiosity. "What does that have to do with you abandoning your pregnant fiancée?" "Everything," he said, his voice low and urgent. The technology was groundbreaking, but it threatened powerful established interests. Large energy conglomerates, governments reliant on existing power structures, they saw Ether Dynamics as an existential threat. One particular consortium, a shadowy group, known only as the Helios Collective, began a hostile takeover attempt. They didn't just want the company, they wanted to suppress the technology. They played dirty, Rachel. Very dirty. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "They uncovered my relationship with you. They knew about the pregnancy. They sent me messages, photos of you, of your apartment. They threatened to expose your pregnancy, to portray you as a gold digger, to ruin your career, to make your life a living hell. And worse, they threatened Leo, your unborn child. They said if I didn't disappear, if I didn't sever all ties, they would ensure you and the baby vanished in a way no one would ever find you. They had people everywhere. They had demonstrated their reach. I believed them, Rachel. I truly believed they would make good on their threat." Rachel stared at him, her mind reeling. The sheer audacity of the claim, the horrifying implications. "You expect me to believe this? That you, the untouchable Alexander Sterling, were blackmailed into abandoning your family? Why didn't you go to the authorities? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they said they had infiltrated every level. They had eyes everywhere. And telling you would have put you in more danger. They presented it as a choice sacrifice, our relationship, or lose everything, including your lives. My only option, the only way to protect you and our child, was to disappear, to cut all contact, to make it look like I was a callous monster. They wanted me isolated, broken, focused only on saving my company so they could eventually take it over themselves. My legal team, even Jonathan Vance, was instructed to maintain this narrative, to send that letter, to offer the money as a final cruel flourish, designed to sever any lingering emotional ties." Julian, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "If this is true, Mr. Sterling, what happened to the Helios Collective, and why are you here now?" "It took 3 years, Alexander said, his eyes hard. 3 years of fighting them in the shadows, of building alliances, of tracking their assets and their network. It almost cost me everything. My entire focus was on dismantling them, on making sure they could never hurt you or anyone else. We finally delivered the decisive blow 6 months ago. Their leadership was exposed, their network dissolved, their neutralized, effectively wiped out. Once I knew you and Leo were truly safe, I began searching for you, but you had vanished as thoroughly as I had. A bitter laugh escaped him. It seems you're as good at disappearing as I am. He paused, his voice softening, a profound vulnerability returning. When I saw you at the gala, Rachel with Leo, I knew I had to come clean. I couldn't live with the lie anymore. I couldn't bear to let Leo grow up thinking his father was simply a monster. I chose to save your lives, but in doing so, I destroyed our trust, our love. And I regret it every single day, every single breath. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, not of sadness, but of a complex, tumultuous mix of anger, disbelief, and a terrifying glimmer of understanding. The story, as horrifying as it was, held a strange, disturbing logic. It explained his ruthlessness, his sudden, complete disappearance, the cold formality of the legal letter. It explained Alexander Sterling. "You think this excuses it?" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. "You think telling me this now makes 3 years of agony, of raising our son, alone, disappear? You took my choice, Alexander. You decided for me. You decided that I couldn't handle the truth, that I wasn't strong enough to face it with you. I thought I was protecting you," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "It was a mistake, Rachel, a terrible, unforgivable mistake, but I truly believed it was the only way." Julian interjected again, his voice measured. "Alexander, even if what you say is true, you subjected Rachel to immense emotional trauma, and you robbed Leo of his father for the most formative years of his life. How do you propose to undo that?" Alexander looked from Julian to Rachel, his gaze filled with a desperate longing. "I don't expect forgiveness, not yet, but I want to be a father to Leo. I want to be in his life. I want to show you, Rachel, that I've changed, that I would do anything to make amends." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn, leather-bound book. "This is a journal. I kept it for the last 3 years. Every decision, every fear, every agonizing moment, every day I thought about you and Leo. It's the truth, Rachel. Read it. If you want proof, if you want to understand the hell I've been living." He pushed it across the table. Rachel looked at the journal, then at him, her emotions a chaotic storm. Part of her wanted to throw it back in his face, to walk away and never look back. Another part, the part that remembered the man she once loved, yearned for the truth, for a reason to mitigate the immense pain he had caused. "I need time," Rachel said, her voice strained. "Time to process this. Time to decide what, if anything, comes next." She picked up the journal, its worn leather, warm against her fingers, a tangible link to the agonizing secret he had carried. Over the next few weeks, Rachel immersed herself in Alexander's journal. Its pages were filled with meticulous entries detailing corporate espionage, clandestine meetings, terrifying threats, and Alexander's own desperate, agonizing decisions. It painted a picture of a man trapped, making an impossible choice he believed was for her and Leo's safety. He wrote of his loneliness, his torment, his surveillance of her life from afar, ensuring she was safe, thriving, even though he couldn't intervene. He even had detailed observations of Leo's milestones, gleaned from afar, each one a dagger to his heart. The entries were raw, vulnerable, and heartbreakingly honest. It was Alexander, stripped bare, the billionaire facade gone. The journal didn't excuse his actions, but it explained them. It didn't erase the pain, but it reframed it. Rachel cried, reading it, tears of anger, sorrow, and a strange, grudging empathy. He hadn't just been a coward, he had been a man pushed to an extreme, making a terrible choice under duress. But it was still his choice, and she had borne the brunt of it. She discussed it with Clara and Evelyn, sharing the chilling details of the Helios Collective. Clara, the journalist, was horrified. "My God, Rachel, this is bigger than I thought. A real conspiracy. He might actually be telling the truth." Evelyn, stoic as ever, acknowledged the complexity. "He acted from a place of fear, not malice, my dear, a flawed protector. But that doesn't mean you must forgive him, only that you can understand." Julian, too, read excerpts, his medical mind trying to reconcile the extreme stress Alexander must have been under with the emotional fallout. "It's a trauma response, Rachel," Julian explained gently. "He chose the lesser of two perceived evils, believing it was the only path to protect you. It's a tragic story, regardless of the outcome. The truth didn't lead to immediate forgiveness, but it opened a door, a very narrow one." Rachel agreed to allow Alexander supervised visits with Leo, starting slowly in neutral environments. Their first meeting at a children's museum was awkward, tentative. Alexander, usually so commanding, was visibly nervous, his powerful hands clumsy, as he tried to connect with his son. Leo, initially shy, was eventually won over by Alexander's surprising knowledge of dinosaurs and his quiet, attentive nature. Seeing Alexander interact with Leo, a flicker of the man she had loved, stirred something complex within Rachel. Over time, Alexander, guided by Rachel's strict boundaries and Julian's discreet observations, slowly began to build a relationship with Leo. He was patient, consistent, and genuinely devoted. He didn't try to buy Leo's affection with lavish gifts, instead opting for shared experiences. Trips to the Natural History Museum building, elaborate Lego castles, quiet evenings reading storybooks. He became Daddy Alexander, a new evolving figure in Leo's world, distinct from the ever-present, nurturing Mommy. For Rachel, the path to healing was long and arduous. She and Julian's relationship had deepened during this period of turmoil. He was her steady anchor, her calm port in the storm. He truly saw her, without the baggage of Alexander's past. He understood her strength, her vulnerability, and her fierce love for Leo. Their bond was built on shared respect, mutual admiration, and a quiet, profound affection. Julian never pressured her, simply offering his presence, his wisdom, and his unwavering support. He was the gentle, consistent love she had always craved, without the drama or the gilded cage. The final confrontation between Rachel and Alexander wasn't a shouting match, but a quiet, somber conversation months later, once Leo had comfortably accepted Alexander's presence in his life. They met without Julian in Rachel's upstate home, the one she had built with her own vision, far from Alexander's old penthouse. "I understand your reasons, Alexander," Rachel said, her voice calm, devoid of anger, but also of warmth. "And I see the remorse. But understanding doesn't equate to forgiveness. You took my agency. You made me walk through hell alone. And while you were fighting your battles in the shadows, I was fighting mine in plain sight, building a life, raising our son, without a moment to pause or process what you had done." He nodded, his gaze downcast. "I know, and I accept that. I lost you, Rachel. I understand that. But I won't lose Leo. I want to be a father to him. A present, loving father, without any more secrets or disappearances." "You have that chance," Alexander, Rachel conceded, looking out at her thriving garden. For Leo, you have that chance. But for us, what we had is gone. It was shattered beyond repair. I've built a new life, Alexander, a stronger one, and I deserve a future built on trust, honesty, and partnership, not on fear and impossible choices forced upon me. She turned her gaze, meeting his resolute. I am happy, Alexander. I have Leo, my work, and Julian. He's a good man. He was there when you weren't, and that makes all the difference. The quiet statement hung in the air, a final, definitive demarcation of their respective futures. Alexander's face, already pale, tightened further. He looked at her, at the woman she had become. Strong, successful, independent, surrounded by love and purpose. She was no longer the heartbroken fiancée, but a formidable force, a phoenix, risen from the ashes he had inadvertently created. He saw the genuine peace in her eyes, the contentment that Julian had helped cultivate. And in that moment, Alexander Sterling, the man who once believed he could control every variable, finally understood the true cost of his sacrifice. He had saved their lives, perhaps, but he had lost his love, his partner, his future with her. The empire he fought so hard to protect now felt hollow, its victories tasting like ash without the family he had so carelessly, so tragically pushed away. He had faced his demons, defeated his enemies, but the battle for Rachel's heart was one he could never win. This isn't just a tale of a millionaire's shocking return, but a profound exploration of betrayal, resilience, and the power of a woman's indomitable spirit. Rachel Vance's journey from abandonment to becoming Dr. Rachel Vance, a titan of sustainable innovation, proves that true strength isn't about avoiding pain, but about transforming it. Alexander Sterling's agonizing secret reveals the hidden complexities behind seemingly cruel actions, forcing us to question what truly lies beneath the surface of power and desperation. While some bonds prove unbreakable, others once shattered can only be rebuilt into new forms. If this story resonated with you, if you were captivated by Rachel's fight or Alexander's redemption, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life inspired narratives that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support helps us bring more compelling stories to life. Thank you for watching.